that moment when you go into a Northern Ireland bar and are immediately accused of being a bad person because you're from the United States. Doesn't feel very good. Culture shock, I guess. But we're staying in this cute little coastal town, and we went to just enjoy a beer, and we're like, we don't want to talk about anything or anything like that, and it just ended up with me in tears.
It doesn't surprise me, but it still blows my mind how Americans, specifically MAGA Americans, travel around the world without doing any historical research, any political research. And they just assume that everyone's just like so excited for them to be there. Like, girl, unless you were in a like specifically unionist, anti-immigration, hateful little pocket of Northern Ireland, like maybe like somewhere small in East Belfast, they're not gonna like a Trump supporter. I feel like that's common knowledge.
Prior to Trump, when I was overseas, people might ask me those sort of questions, but it was more of a general curiosity thing as opposed to a judgment thing. And by the way, I've lived overseas during elections in the United States, so heightened curiosity, right? And I've always voted Democrat, but I know that if people had voted Republican, people might have thought, oh, that's kind of a little weird, but it wouldn't have been overly judgy, not before Trump. And the thing that Trumpers need to understand is that this is not normal times, and Trump is not a normal conservative Republican, whatever you want to call him, president. Not even close. Because what Trump, as president of the United States, is doing is causing incredible harm globally. The harm isn't just staying within our borders. It's causing chaos everywhere. And so, yes, you are going to be judged if you go outside of the United States. Frankly, you'd be judged in a lot of parts of the United States where they do not like Trump and they do not support Trump, like where I live. So my suggestion and my advice to all of you Trumpers, stay in your little red bubbles and reap what you've sown.
To everyone outside of the United States who gets American tourists, here's what I'd like you to do, if I may. I know that we stick out like sore thumbs, whether it be our clothes or our accents. I've heard it's our teeth too. But ask them who they voted for. Like, be blunt, be direct. Don't let them hide. Don't let them say, oh, no, I didn't vote for him, and scurry away. Ask them. And then, very, very sweetly, test them. Have an actual conversation about why the felon's policies are a nightmare. Ask them questions like, who pays for the tariff? Or should Canada be the 51st state? Should Greenland become part of the United States? Was January 6th a peaceful protest or an insurrection? Ask them what's happening to women's health care. Ask them their thoughts about mass deportations. And watch them squirm. Because the thing is, those of us who didn't vote for the felon, we will gladly tell you. We will go off about how dangerous he is, about the cruelty, the corruption, the chaos. But the ones who did, they might lie, but they can't fake the conviction, because they're going to stumble and they'll deflect. And you'll know. And when you do, make their stay real uncomfortable. Don't smile. Don't be polite. Kick them out of your establishment. Make them feel it. What are they going to do? Like, what? Like, tell their MAGA friends not to come? Oh no, the horror. The horror. Call the authorities. Call ICE. They'd be laughed at. And to the Americans who want to travel abroad, if you voted for them, be ready. Because you don't really get to support fascism at home and then expect a warm welcome everywhere else in the world. Your discomfort is earned. And I'm not sorry about the discomfort. Not even a little bit.
Hello guys, and welcome to the Joy Report, where we get an outsider's view with an insider's clarity. You know how sometimes a story goes viral and you can instantly tell it's going to divide people? This is one of those stories, but not for the reasons you might expect. A MAGA tourist went to Ireland, had a bad experience at a bar, and came back online to complain about how unfairly she was treated. And at first glance, you might think, okay, maybe she just ran into rude people. That happens. But the reason this story blew up is because a lot of people didn't see it as random or unfair. They saw it as inevitable. And that's the uncomfortable conversation we need to have. Before we proceed, all credit goes to the creators of these videos. You'll find all their ads in my description box. But for now, let me play you a few more clips and I'll be back with more commentary.
That moment when you go into a Northern Ireland bar and are immediately accused of being a bad person because you're from the United States.
Well, that's kind of odd. I travel around a bit. I got a couple stamps in the old passport. I've never had anyone assume I'm a bad person just because I'm an American. Luckily, she did a story time, and we can find out why.
Gave us our pints, what have you. Then the gentleman said, "Are you American?" And I said, "Yes, we're American." And I'm not lying to you when I say it instantly went from, "Yes, I'm American," to, "Well, who'd you vote for?"
Exactly. I'd ask.
And I kind of was just shocked. I'm like, wow, that was very direct. And I said, we're on vacation. We're trying to get away from all of that. We don't really want to talk about it.
Which means she voted for Trump. I've never met anyone that voted for Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, Barack Obama, ever be embarrassed about their vote or forthcoming about it. There's only one group of people that won't tell you who they voted for, which is how you know who they voted for. The absolute audacity to think that you get to vote for Donald Trump, who's starting wars across the world, who is very anti-Palestine when Ireland is extremely pro-Palestine. The audacity to even visit other countries with the way you want people treated in this country. Now, she tried to say, oh, y'all don't know who I voted for. Y'all don't know who I voted for. Well, you didn't delete all your reposts.
Oh, so you really don't care about illegal immigrants being detained by ICE and families being separated? No. No.
And you're surprised people in other countries don't want you there.
Does this happen in reality? Of course, humans are prejudiced, but that is not what happened here. They asked her who she voted for, and she wouldn't answer. She said because she didn't want to talk about it on vacation. I see a lot of people saying only a Trump voter would not want to talk about politics, but that is definitely not the case. A lot of my fellow immigrants will understand. I have very little interest in talking to non-Americans about US politics, but I understand why they're asking. So it's very easy to say, I hate him and everything he's doing, but I don't really want to get into it. In this case, she's trying really hard to avoid admitting that she did in fact vote for Trump. She follows most of the family. She has reposted pro-Trump content. She made a video, which I can't find anymore, where she's moaning about people getting canceled for their vote. She's not crying because she experienced xenophobia, which perhaps she needs to be reminded is a key principle of MAGA ideology. She's crying because she thought she could escape the social consequences of her vote by leaving the US, and she can't. When Trump voters leave their echo chamber, they are made to feel ignorant and unwelcome, and she thought that that would stop at the border. Then she went to a politically charged part of Ireland, unknowingly called it the wrong name, and was surprised that her vote mattered to them too. Even abroad, she felt unwelcome and ignorant, and that's why she's crying. I don't have a lot of hope at this late in the game that experiences like this can change a Trump voter, but you never know. All that said, a lot of the people reacting to this also need to learn the difference between xenophobia and holding someone accountable for their vote.
Because what happened to her, getting a bit of pushback, maybe some harsh words, maybe feeling unwelcome, that's actually a very small thing compared to what people in other parts of the world deal with every single day. And more importantly, it raises a bigger question: should there be consequences, even social ones, for the political choices people make, especially when those choices have global impact? Now, before people get defensive, let's slow this down for a second. Nobody is saying someone deserves harm or danger. That's not the conversation. What we are talking about is accountability, the kind that doesn't come from laws or governments, but from other people, from society, from culture, from the rest of the world reacting to what your country does and what you support. Because here's the truth. For a long time, Americans have lived in a kind of a bubble, a very comfortable one. We're used to thinking of politics as something that mostly affects us internally: taxes, healthcare, jobs, culture wars. But for the rest of the world, American politics is not just domestic policy, it's foreign policy, it's military action, it's economic pressure, it's decisions that ripple outward and shape entire regions. And yet, a lot of Americans don't engage with that reality at all. So when someone travels abroad, especially someone who openly supports policies or leaders associated with controversial global actions, they're stepping into a space where people don't see those choices as abstract. They see them as personal, because for them, it is personal. And that's where the disconnect happens. Because from the woman's perspective, she's just on vacation, she's just having a drink, she's just being herself. But from the perspective of someone sitting across from her, hearing her accent, maybe hearing her opinions, she might represent something much bigger, not just a person, but a system, a country, a set of decisions that have had real consequences. And again, that doesn't justify cruelty, but it explains reaction. There's this idea that Americans should be able to go anywhere in the world and be welcomed without question. And for a long time, that was mostly true. The American passport carried a kind of unspoken privilege. It opened doors. It came with a certain status. But that perception is changing. And it's changing because the world is paying attention. People see what's happening globally. They see conflicts, interventions, economic influence, and they connect those things, rightly or wrongly, to American voters and American culture. And when they encounter an American abroad, especially one who openly aligns with controversial politics, that tension can surface in very human ways, not in policy debates, but in conversations at bars, inside comments, in the tone of a room shifting. And that's what this viral moment really represents. It's not about one woman in Ireland. It's about a broader shift in how Americans are perceived internationally. It's about the end of a kind of automatic goodwill that used to exist. And it's about the beginning of something else, something more complicated, more conditional.
This is going viral, and like I said, it's for all the right reasons, because this needs to be normalized. There has to be consequence for who you vote for. There has to be consequence at this point with all the terrible shit that this administration has done, not just to the world, but to America as well, that you realize it's not okay, that you get at least a little bit of pushback. There's nothing wrong with that. I'll even give you the benefit of the doubt and say that all you do is watch right-wing news, so you're fed lines of propaganda that deny reality, so maybe you're just truly ignorant. But at some point, ignorance isn't even an excuse. This is going to become more normal as what's happening in the Middle East right now continues to break down, as war continues to spread, as the economies around the world continue to suffer because of the decisions of the United States that are only possible because people like this woman voted this person in charge. But that's what it is to be an American, and that's what the rest of the world doesn't understand. We live our lives with zero accountability. We live our lives not knowing or caring about the consequence of our government's action on other nations. Americans don't care, and that's why there's still over 40% of our country who support all the actions that are happening in Iran right now. And mostly it's because they have no idea what's going on there. They just think that America's going in and spreading freedom, right? They hear that same old line that saw us get into Iraq, that saw us get into Afghanistan, that saw us destabilize Central and South America. They eat up the same lines of bullshit again and again and again from generation to generation. And when it comes to actual fallout or consequences or mass graves that are dug, or generations who are completely lost because their nations don't have infrastructure and don't have a future, and when they end up at the southern border or the northern border or fly into America and try to make a better life in the nation that destroyed their very country, Americans can't be surprised that when they go abroad, especially the Americans who support all this that's happening, that you get a little pushback. You get a couple mean words at a bar. All it take a couple mean words at a bar. I don't have to worry about my house blowing up. I don't have to worry about, is it safe for me to go to the grocery store? I don't have to worry about a drone hitting a school while my kid's in it. We don't have to worry about these things. And this is a great gift that comes with the ignorance of living in America. You're taught to be ignorant. It's indoctrinated into us, and it's a shame. This lady went viral because she got a small glimpse of reality. She got a small glimpse that the world exists outside of America. She got a small glimpse that people actually care about what happens in other countries, not just owning the libs. The truth is, travel is a privilege. And it's already becoming difficult for Americans like myself to travel because there are more restrictions being set on Americans. American passport used to be the golden passport, really can get you into any country. That's not the case anymore. That's changing. And over the next 3 years especially, it's going to get even more strict. Why would Europe welcome Americans at this point? It pains me to say that because I love Europe and it's a place that I want to raise my kid. But what's the benefit to actually have Americans coming to Europe other than for tourist money? And as tourism picks up from China coming into Europe, from Asia coming into Europe, as their economies do better, there's not going to be a need for the ugly American tourist anymore. And so we say that America is really becoming obsolete. It is already a global pariah. It's been shut off from the rest of its allies. And even though the governments will still work with Americans, the fact is, many people around the world want nothing to do with Americans anymore. They don't want to hear our accent, especially if the person behind that accent is one who actually voted for all the bad shit that they have to deal with on a daily basis.
Now, some people will argue that this is unfair, that individuals shouldn't be judged for the actions of their government. And in theory, that's a fair point. But in practice, it's not that simple, because in a democracy, people do have a role in shaping their government. And while no single voter is responsible for everything, collective choices do have collective consequences. And those consequences don't always stay within borders. Think about how often Americans talk about accountability domestically. We say elections matter. We say your vote has power. We say leadership reflects the will of the people. But then when the same logic is applied globally, when people in other countries react to those choices, we suddenly want to separate ourselves from it. You can't have it both ways. If your vote matters, then it matters everywhere those decisions have impact. And again, let's be clear. What this woman experienced was mild. A few uncomfortable moments, some pushback, maybe feeling judged. That's it. Compare that to what people in conflict zone experience. Compare that to people living in unstable regions where daily life includes uncertainty, danger, and loss. That contrast is what makes this conversation so intense. Because for many people around the world, the idea of consequences isn't a rude comment at a bar. It's something far more serious. And so when they see an American upset about social discomfort, it can come across as out of touch, not because their feelings aren't real, but because the scale is so different. And that's where the concept of privilege comes in, not as an insult, but as a reality check. Being able to travel freely, to go on vacation, to experience other cultures, that is a privilege. And with that privilege comes exposure. Exposure to different perspectives, different histories, different opinions about your country and your identity. Travel isn't just about seeing new places, it's about being seen. And sometimes, what you see reflected back isn't flattering. And that doesn't mean the world is against you. It means the world is reacting to something. And instead of immediately dismissing that reaction as unfair, there's an opportunity there to ask why. Why do people feel this way? Why is there tension? What experiences or information are shaping their perspective? Because here's another uncomfortable truth. A lot of Americans genuinely don't know how their country is perceived abroad, not because they're bad people, but because they've never had to think about it. The education system doesn't emphasize it. The media doesn't always highlight it. And culturally, there's often more focus on internal narratives than external ones. So when that gap gets filled, when someone travels and suddenly encounters those perspectives, it can feel shocking. But shock doesn't mean injustice. Sometimes it just means unfamiliarity.
I'm really confused at why I keep finding MAGA followers on my page. My page is to help people escape the USA. Let me be clear, MAGA. You need to stay in the United States. You voted for this outcome. You cheered for Trump. You demanded this chaos. Now you get to live with it. Most people in the world disagree with you and do not want to see you. The anti-American sentiment that's growing is not aimed at every American, it's aimed at you, at the people who supported the guy who wrecked alliances, praised dictators, pulled out of climate agreements, and made the US look like a circus on the global stage. So when you think you can just pack a bag and move somewhere else to get away from the downfall of the USA, nope. Other countries have been watching you and your party. They saw the rallies, the chants, the hate that you enabled, and they do not want that hate exported into their communities. You voted for isolation. You voted for division. You voted for a man who promised walls. My page is for the people you voted against. So don't follow me and stay in your burning country that you created.
Now, none of this is to say that every negative interaction is justified or that Americans should expect hostility everywhere they go. That's not reality either. People are individuals. Experiences vary. Many Americans travel and are welcomed warmly, but the trend, the shift in perception, that's real. And it's worth paying attention to because it speaks to something bigger than tourism. It speaks to global relationships, to reputation, to how nations and their people are viewed over time. And those things don't change overnight, but they do evolve. And right now, they are evolving. So when you see stories like this go viral, it's tempting to reduce them to simple narratives, rude locals, sensitive tourists, culture clash. But that misses the deeper context. This isn't just about manners, it's about meaning. It's about what people represent to each other in an increasingly connected world. And maybe the most important takeaway isn't about assigning blame, but about encouraging awareness. Because whether we like it or not, we all carry something within us when we travel. Our nationality, our culture, our beliefs, they don't stay at home. And people will respond to those things based on their own experiences and perspectives. The question is, what do we do with that response? Do we dismiss it? Do we get defensive? Or do we listen? Even if it's uncomfortable, because growth doesn't usually happen in comfort. And maybe that's what this moment really is, not a scandal or a controversy, just a small, uncomfortable glimpse into a much larger reality, one that challenges assumptions and forces a little bit of reflection. And maybe, just maybe, that's not a... So what do you all think? When Americans travel abroad, do you think they carry responsibility for how their country is perceived? And can people separate individuals from the governments they vote for, or is that unrealistic? Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. I would love to keep this discussion going. Otherwise, that's it from me. I also have another video specifically tailored for you. And if you enjoy such kind of content, please click up here and enjoy. Also, consider subscribing, liking and sharing because it helps me grow my channel and helps YouTube recommend this video to a wider audience. But for now, thank you so much for watching. And until the next time, the Joy Report. Out.